Hi you guys, today I'm going to show you how to make my amazing gluten-free Olive Garden style breadsticks. They're soft, they're fluffy, they're just like Olive Garden. You will not be able to tell they're gluten-free, I promise. And at the end of the video, I am also going to show you how to make my alfredo sauce. We've been making this for years. We serve it with pasta. We serve it with the breadsticks, of course. It's so easy, so let's get started. So we're first going to make the tangzong, which is just a Japanese roux, basically, that combines a little bit of the flour in the recipe as well as a little bit of the milk. And what this does is pre-gelatinizes the starches in the dough, which helps it to retain moisture longer. It kind of retains some of the moisture, which all that means for us is that it's going to keep the bread softer for longer and not dry out so quickly. And in gluten-free baking, that's always a bonus. So it also helps to make the dough less sticky to work with, and yet another bonus in gluten-free baking. So we just put this over a medium-low heat and we whisk it until it starts to thicken, and then it'll look like it's gonna kind of curdle. Just keep whisking and it'll be fine. It'll create this nice thick paste. And once we have that, we just take it off the heat and we'll let it sit there while we prepare our other ingredients. We can add it to the dough while it's still warm, but just not piping hot. So we're going to start with milk, my bread flour blend, which is, of course, in the description box below. This is the tangzong, psyllium husks, whole psyllium husks, some melted butter, a little bit of sugar, yeast, and salt. And we just combine all of this. Well, combine the tangzong along with everything else except for the milk. And we'll go ahead and put this on the mixer, start it up, and then we'll slowly add the milk until it creates a dough. And once the dough is completely mixed together, then we can bump up the speed to the usual, like medium high, and get it going for 5 minutes until it's nice and soft and smooth. And then we're going to cover it, of course, and we'll go ahead and let this rise for a couple of hours in a nice warm environment until it's doubled in size. And once it's risen, then we can put it in the fridge and let it sit at least for 6 to 8 hours or overnight. So this is the next day, and you'll see that the dough has deflated a little bit. That's perfectly normal when it's in the refrigerator in the cold environment. It will eventually rise up again when you go to bake these. So I'm only using half this dough. I'm going to put the rest of it back in the refrigerator for another use. I do this quite often with all of my bread doughs. So we just want to knead this until smooth, just a few minutes. And then what I like to do is weigh it, see how much the total amount weighs, and then I can divide that and see how many breadsticks I'm going to get. So on my scale, this happens to weigh 20 ounces. Yours will be different unless you weigh out the entire amount of dough and then divide it evenly. So 20 ounces divided by 2 ounces for each breadstick would be 10 breadsticks. So I'm going to divide these by 2 ounces each. And then start rolling them into breadsticks. Now, I personally like a thinner, not as fat breadstick than what Olive Garden offers, but you can do them fatter if you'd like, just don't make them as long and skinny. So just pinch the edges where you're rolling it up, and then start rolling it up like a breadstick. And then we'll put these on a parchment lined baking sheet and cover them loosely with plastic wrap and let them rise until just about doubled in size, not quite. That'll only take about 30 minutes or so. And then right before they have completely risen, preheat your oven to 450 degrees. And what I like to do with these is just add a couple of ice cubes at the bottom because I want just a slight crust, but not a really thick crust. And the ice, just for one thing, helps that burst of steam, helps them rise before the crust sets. And then they're in there so short of a time, 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes is all, that it just helps those breadsticks rise up. Now I've got some melted butter with about a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. You can use garlic salt, but I already use salted butter. So if you use unsalted butter, then you could use garlic salt instead. Or use garlic powder and then add a little bit of salt. I like that little bit of salt from the butter spread over the top of these. And then you just brush them with the garlic butter mixture, and that's it. And when you break them open, they are just like Olive Garden from what I can remember. I've had my family members tell me the same thing, and they've had Olive Garden since. So they can eat the real deal. So now to make my wonderful, wonderful Alfredo sauce. So easy, so good, you guys. We just start by melting some butter and add a little bit of cream cheese. And we melt this over low until the cream cheese starts breaking up. And it's going to look kind of curdled and weird, but that's totally normal of this recipe. Then add 2 cups of heavy cream. And I also like to grate in some fresh nutmeg, just like a pinch or so. Or you can also use ground nutmeg that's already, ground up in a little spice jar. As well as just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. We don't need to really add any salt to this because there'll be plenty of salt from the fresh Parmesan cheese. So I would then bump up the heat now and continue whisking until it starts bubbling, and then reduce it to a simmer and let it simmer for about 15 minutes or so until it's thickened, and then add your freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano. You don't want to use the fake stuff here. This is like the real deal. Do yourself a favor, buy a block of real Parmigiano Reggiano with the rind on the outside. So worth the money, so good. And that's it, you guys. Olive Garden style breadsticks with Alfredo sauce. Add some pasta, maybe some blackened chicken, a side salad. You've got a complete meal. Enjoy.